Um, I want to welcome you all to this year's Abner and Roz Goldstine Scholar in Residence. And I want to begin by thanking Abner and Roz Goldstine. Abner and Roz Goldstine have, for some 2 decades, year after year, enabled us to bring some of the best scholars anywhere in the Jewish world to Sinai Temple, usually in person, although these days virtually. And they have done this with graciousness and generosity. And we are enormously grateful for all of their philanthropic efforts throughout the Jewish world, which are extensive and long-lasting. But in particular today, we're grateful for the Abner and Roz Goldstine Scholar in Residence, which they brought to Sinai Temple and through media, actually to the whole world. So thank you, Abner. Thank you, Roz. May you flourish for many, many, many years. I also want to thank our staff, Rebecca Small, who is our director of our programming, and also Roy Regev and Gary Feynman, who are responsible together for not only the publicity, but also the fact that our internet is working and that you can see things and setting up webinars and so on. So we're grateful to all of them. And now I want to give you a slightly different introduction than you would normally get to Rabbi Tamar Appelbaum. I'll give you the quick part of her bio, because her bio is extensive and she's got all sorts of awards and so on. But she's the founder of Zion, which is an Eretz Yisraeli congregation in Jerusalem, which I have had the great privilege of attending a number of times. And if you're in Jerusalem, you must go. It's an enormously spiritual experience. But she's also the co-founder of the Beit Midrash for Israeli Rabbis at the Hartman Institute and Hamidrasha at Oranim. But I want to just tell you about one experience, which will tell you more about Rabbi Tamar maybe than all of her resume. We had lunch once in Jerusalem, and after lunch, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I remember it vividly. After lunch, we were leaving and a beggar came up to us and asked us for money. We both gave him money, and he told us that's not enough. And so Rabbi Tamar said, Shalom, do you need food? Because she knew him since he's a beggar in Jerusalem. And he said, yes, I need food. And she said, let's go together to the supermarket and I'll get you food. And she walked off with him and she went to the market. That to me is the epitome of a rabbi. I was so moved and touched by that. And I thought, if people could see that, they would know what a rabbi is. And so it is both a real zechut, a real merit for our synagogue, and a real pleasure for me to welcome you, Rabbi Tamar, to the Scholar in Residence Day today. And unfortunately, we have to start with the tragic and painful circumstances of what is going on in Jerusalem. And so since you are right there, could you give us a little background?
Thank you so much, Rabbi Wolpe. And I want to say that we have, in many ways, spiritual parents in America. You are one of them that we can follow and look and see how teachers, Jewish teachers, rabbis are supposed to look. The ability to see the grandeur of vision and also the one person. And I want to thank everyone for this moment of coming together. We live in Talpiot, just across the Temple Mount. From our street, we could go just 2 minutes and see the Temple Mount. And these have been very, very painful 24 hours. Our daughters last night were in the shelter downstairs, not understanding what happened and why it's happening. And I want to say that all around Eretz Yisrael, there are so many people right now who are in pain. Here and also on the other side, children who see such pain, who are all afraid. And we, the adults of this world, are in charge of giving them comfort and safety and a different world, a world they can live in peacefully.
And do you think that there is a way out of this dilemma? I mean, it seems to me a very, very difficult one for the courts, for the government, and so on, because this is about property that was purchased a long time ago, before Jordan took over that area. And so there is a certain real justice on the ground to the claims that Israel is making. I don't know how that will play out. Do you have any idea? I don't want to ask you to be a politician, but can you give us at least
Thank you. I'm so happy to be a rabbi. I want to say it's very difficult because it's actually many things coming together here in Israel right now. I think it's the fact that we're now in Ramadan. This is Ramadan, the time of Ramadan.
Yeah.
And Muslims are now on their way every evening to pray. And this is more than one story and one dilemma. There is a very big tension around Israeli Arabs who have been on their way to pray on the Temple Mount, as well as Jews. And the culmination of many things coming together. I want to remind all of us that just Lag BaOmer, 1 week ago, we were all mourning together on
Right.
the 45 Jews who were killed, who died up in Meron. And I want to say that it was their neighbors of Tzfat in the Galilee who invited the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, to come to their houses, to shower, to cry. And this is so painful because we just had a glimpse of a moment of a tragedy, a Jewish tragedy, that so many people all around Israel, Jews and non-Jews and Arabs and Muslims, opened their houses to us. And here we are just a week later, pained together, crying together, and having to solve many dilemmas together.
I think maybe we will understand this better if we understand Jerusalem better. And really, before these terrible events occurred, we invited you because yesterday was Yom Yerushalayim, because you are a rabbinite in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim. And so, Rabbi Tamar, would you teach us about Jerusalem?
Thank you, Rabbi Wolpe, from all my heart. I want to first say thank you. I want to say thank you to our grandparents and our great-grandparents who said generation after generation, L'shana ba'a b'Yerushalayim abnuya. They never stopped dreaming of Jerusalem, and they knew that one day we will arrive there. They were sure of that. And indeed, what an incredible time we live in, that we all can walk the streets of Jerusalem. We know Jerusalem. It's not a long, far idea or place. It's a place that many of us, I'm sure that many of you have visited. And I want to say thank you that without planning in advance, Rabbi Wolpe, Rebecca, and the whole team, everyone decided to take a moment to think about Yerushalayim and to say, once again, L'shana ba'a b'Yerushalayim abnuya. The idea of Jewish people dreaming of Jerusalem and never stopping that in our wedding ceremonies and in other moments means that Jerusalem is so much greater than we can imagine. It's not only a concrete city, it's something much beyond it. But first, let's start with a concrete city. One of the most beautiful things that I think so many American Jews and Jews all around the world feel is a true connection to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. So I just want to take a moment to invite each one of you in the chat to write a favorite place of yours in Jerusalem, just for a moment, so we'll be able to see all these places and to feel a real, true love to Jerusalem for those of you who have come over and over again, for those of you who did not come yet, but dream of doing so, and for those of us who all are waiting for the world to heal from COVID and to be able to come and walk quietly, quiet streets, Be'ezrat Hashem, God willing, of Jerusalem. So I hope that by now, some of you can see places that you love in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, knowing that the connection is not only for people who live in Jerusalem, but the connection is of all Am Yisrael. All the Jewish people has a true connection to this city. The question is why? Why? What is this place? What is Yerushalayim? Why is Yerushalayim so important? Chachamim, Chazal, our ancestors teach that Yerushalayim was the first place where Adam and Eve, when they were banished from the Garden of Eden, they found themselves sitting in Yerushalayim. That Jerusalem is the entrance to two places. It could be the entrance to the Garden of Eden, but it could also be the entrance to the terrible, terrible hell. But in many ways, God, Hashem, said that it depends on us which entrance it's going to be. It's supposed to be the exact opposite of Sodom. Sodom is a place of indifference. People care only for themselves. Yerushalayim, on the other hand, is the place of care, the place of justice, the place of mercy, chesed, the place of faith and of trust in ourselves. So I want to take us for a few minutes just into a very short journey in the streets of Yerushalayim Shel Mala. Some of you are writing now about the streets of Yerushalayim Shel Mata. Those you know. I see Marvin writing about Armon Hatziv. It's a very special area indeed, and it makes me so happy. Thank you, Marvin, for writing. And I want to take us to the streets of heavenly Jerusalem so we can see them just for a minute. I hope you hear me better right now. And I want to take you to the streets of heavenly Jerusalem. For those of you, many of you, who have streets that you love in earthly Jerusalem, let's just take a walk to the heavenly one, to remember it together, to walk its streets together, and maybe understand about it something even more so together. So let's open up the source sheet. Thank you, Roy, for that. Toda rabah. And I want to start with this song. This is a song of Yehuda Amichai, a poet who lived here in Jerusalem. I met him a few times in the streets of Yerushalayim. He passed away in 2000, and he, in many ways, was the national poet for the past years. And this is what he writes about Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Why? Why is Jerusalem always in twos? One of above and the other below. And I want to live in a Jerusalem of the middle, without turning my head above and without wounding my legs below. And why is Jerusalem in the language of pairs, like hands, legs? I only want to be in one Jerusalem because I am only one. There are no more. So this is a beautiful song, and it's about the Hebrew word Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim in Hebrew is really in pairs. It's in the many. It's in the form of the many, of the plural. Like you say, enaim, eyes, oznaim, ears, ktefaim, shoulders. Yerushalayim also is in the plural. And he asks why? Why can't you say Yerushal? Yerushal is in the singular. Why do you need to say Jerusalem in the plural? And I think this is one of the questions that we're going to now enter as we enter talking about Jerusalem. We're going to enter talking about just the very name, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. And I want to talk about Jerusalem as a teacher of hope. This is way beyond the concrete moment. This is way beyond newsletters. If we would live by newsletters, all of us would have to give up on so many things. But lehefech, just the opposite. Davka, we need to have chutzpah. Jews always had chutzpah. We have vision. Vision is beyond anything we know, and it needs to lead our path to something better for all of us. So the first thing Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, teaches us is hope in the many. And this is what it says. Rabbi Nachman teaches. And he says, all cures are made out of assembling. When one takes one herb, and then another, and then a few together, and each herb has a different strength of healing. And once they are together, a cure is made out of them. And that assembling, that very assembling, has the strength to cure. For the essence of medicine is assembling all cures by assembling the different herbs together. Rabbi Nachman teaches something that my grandparents taught me. They come from Morocco, from Casablanca. And they taught me many years ago that when someone is sick, you need to try a few things. You give him tea with nana, with siba, with mint. You put some arak on his belly, on his stomach. This is what we do in the Moroccan tradition. We try all kinds of things, and we make sure to try and bring some herbs, some medicines together. We don't try only one thing, like a friend who goes through something difficult. And so one day he hears, love and friendship from one person and the other another. And he receives different cures from different people. Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, is a teacher of healing. And she tells us that the world needs to cure through assembling different people. First, Jews, assembling us Jews. I'm half Moroccan and half Ashkenazi, from France and from Germany. And so many people in my community come from very, very different places all around the world, both the East and the West. And not only that, some of them are religious, some of them are very religious, ultra-Orthodox sometimes, or Zionist. Some of them are Reformed, some of them are conservative. And all of them are so dear, so precious. All of them have a place. They come from different places. They think differently, they look differently. But this is kibbutz galuyot. This is the gathering of the exiles. Jews from all different places coming together, as Jerusalem and our prophets told us that one day we will be able to see all of those together. But not only Jews. Our prophets tell us that hope in the many is even beyond Jews, that Jerusalem one day will have all the 70 different nations coming to this place, believing together in ourselves, in our destiny, in the one human destiny that we are supposed to create for our children and all our descendants to come. Jerusalem tells us that one day it will be a place of prayer for all people. It actually believes in us like a mother believing in all her children. Jerusalem says that God created all of us not in order to live in a jungle against each other, but in order to complete each other, to defend each other, to honor and dignify each other. And Jerusalem has a role. It is the city of God, showing us the trust of God in us, in the many. But not only this, it's not only that Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, is in the plural and the many, and that's part of the destiny. It also has a hope in the future. Yerushalayim, Yeru, like they shall see, they shall hear, Yiru. By the way, the future tense is maybe the most important tense in the Jewish tradition. Israel is something in the future. We're supposed to go straight, slowly, and find the righteous path. Even the name of God is actually in the future. The future is where Jews look up to. They're never stuck in what they see right now, but rather in what they see in the vision of the future. And this is what Rabbi Nachman once again says about the future. In number 2, the essence of faith depends on the imagination. For in what the mind understands, there is no need for faith. And the principle of faith is where the mind ends. And one is left within the realm of the imagination and vision where faith is needed. So faith is not needed when everything is clear. Faith is a very, very, very specific, expensive, precious ability to overcome moments of question, darkness, paradox, dilemmas, challenges. And in those moments that feel as if they were a very long night, faith is a small light guiding us to find a path to the future. Emunah actually comes from the word ima, mother. Emunah, faith, tells us that there's a place that we were born from, and we were destined to be born, destined to live in this world. We have a destiny, and we need to go forth and find a way to cure life, a way to solve its dilemmas, and a way to make a much better future for our children. Yerushalayim is not only in the plural. In Hebrew, Yerushalayim is also in future tense, telling us that it does not give up on us or on faith, telling us that we should be the ones never giving up on her, just like she does not give up on us. But how? The biggest question is always how. Just as Hashem asks Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, he says, Ayeka. Ayeka is, where are you? Where are you means, I'm waiting for you. You should be doing something right now. What is it that we should be doing? What are we supposed to do? And here I come to one of the most beautiful, I think, mitzvot, really acts of healing our world, I would say. And this mitzvah is the mitzvah I love the most. There is no mitzvah I love better, I love more. I have looked again and again to see if I can find another, but I just feel this mitzvah is a very important one. It's a Jewish law that tells us something about life. And this is what it says in the book of Deuteronomy of Dvarim in Parashat Kitetse, in the portion of Kitetse. It says in number 3, if you see your fellow's ox or sheep gone astray, do not ignore it. You must take it back to your fellow. You shall do the same with his ass. You shall do the same with his garment. And so too shall you do with anything that your fellow loses and you find. You must not remain indifferent. This mitzvah tells us that people lose things all the time. I lose things all the time. I lose keys. I lose all kinds of things. I lose my wallet every once in a while. I don't know, maybe you too lose some things every once in a while. Sometimes we just lose. And the Torah teaches us that it's part of life, that it's going to happen to us, that we are going to lose some things in life. It could be our sweater. It could be all kinds of things. But when that happens, we are commanded not to ignore it. Once again, not to ignore it. And once again, you must not remain indifferent. We cannot ignore that someone has lost something. The Shla Kadosh Rabbi Yeshayahu Levi Hurwitz said that this is not only about keys or sweaters, that this is about, in many ways, values. That the Jewish people will be going through many, many challenges when it goes out to the different countries all around the world. And throughout all the challenges and all the 2,000 years of history, before it arrives to Jerusalem, it might suddenly happen to us that we will lose. We will lose faith. We will lose our trust in the future. We will lose our trust in ourselves and maybe our trust in God. And he says this mitzvah is for that moment when you lose hope. Someone will have to bring it back to you. Do not remain indifferent. Do not give up. Do not think that you can live without hope or without faith or without trust. You must not remain indifferent, and you must go out and search for that place, for what you have lost, for future, for faith, for trust. Let's go to number 4. Thank you, Roy, very, very much. How many times should we look for what we lost? Number 4. If he returned it and it ran away, someone brought that cow back to me, returned it and it ran away, even 4 or 5 times or even more, say our ancestors, he is still bound to restore it every time, again and again, for it is written, thou shalt surely restore them. Hashev teshivim. It says you need to bring it back again and again, and you cannot give up on bringing back lost property, because you will lose things in your life, ideals, hope, trust, faith. And your job as the Jewish people will be restoring that lost property, not only for yourself, for the world. The world needs faith, and the world needs trust. And we need to trust ourselves that we were brought here because we have a role, we have a destiny, and the world could become better. It should be tov. This world should be good. It was created to be good. Where does this happen? Where does this mitzvah of reclaiming and restoring the lost property happen? Number 5, there was a claimant stone in Jerusalem. Anyone who lost something would turn there, and anyone who found a lost object would turn there. The finder would stand by the stone and announce his find, and the owner would stand by the stone and give the evidence of identifying marks and take the object. So where was that place where people would gather from all around to find what they had lost or to hand what they have found? That place was in Jerusalem. It was a stone called the claimant stone, Even HaTo'an or Even HaTo'im, here in Jerusalem. I know that many, many times all of us go to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, and it's a very important place. But I want to say that there's another stone, a very important stone in Jerusalem. And that stone was the stone of claimants, where people would never give up on finding what they have lost. So what is Jerusalem? Jerusalem is a place of dialogue. It's a place where we cry together when it pains, when we are far away from what we were supposed to be. And it's a place that trusts us, that we will come and say, I lost. I lost my trust. I lost my hope. I lost the future. Can someone bring it back to me? Sometimes it can be a Jew and a rabbi from abroad coming to Yerushalayim and saying, of course, Tamar, of course, Jews living here, we will not give up. That is the destiny of Jerusalem. Sometimes it could be a Jew from so many different places, and sometimes it could also be a non-Jew coming and standing here and saying, Jerusalem is holy. It's the city of God. It cannot be a city of violence. It must be better. We, all of us, must be better. There we claim that all of us have lost, and all of us must find that which we have been destined to create in the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the city of the many, Yerushalayim in the plural. Jerusalem is the city of the future, Yerushalayim, the future. And Jerusalem is that place that was called by God, according to the Midrash, according to our ancestors, according to tradition. It has 2 parts in its name, Yerushalayim, given by 2 great leaders, Abraham, our father, and Melchizedek Melech Shalem, a non-Jew. Both of them created the name Yerushalayim. As God heard both names, Iru, Shalem, they shall see, Shalem, peace. And he said, I will not choose between the two. They will create together what Jerusalem is destined to be. Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. We have to believe with all our heart, just like our great-great-grandparents and grandparents and mothers, we have to believe that when we say L'shana ba'a b'Yerushalayim habnuya, it means Jerusalem that builds a world of completion, of human beings who dignify each other, who respect each other, who protect each other, and guard the safety of each other, all of them, who give no place to any kind of violence, who stand against it, and who are not indifferent and bring back to each other faith in themselves, in the city of God, in God, and in our destiny. And here is the song of Yehuda Amichai, with which we started. This is what he writes about these streets of Jerusalem as a Jerusalemite. I believe with perfect faith that at this very moment millions of human beings are standing at crossroads and intersections in jungles and deserts, showing each other where to turn, what the right way is, which direction. They explain exactly where to go, what is the quickest way to get there, when to stop and ask again. There, over there, the second turn off, not the first, and from there left or right, near the White House by the oak tree. They explain with excited voices, with a wave of the hand and a nod of the head. There, over there, not that there, the other there, as in some ancient rite. This too is a new religion. I believe with perfect faith that at this very moment. And I want to join the Jerusalemite poet, Yehuda Amichai, and say that I too believe with perfect faith. Only I don't believe it's a new religion. I believe it's an ancient one. It's called being Jewish. Being Jewish is carrying Jerusalem for generation after generation. And even as we already arrived to Jerusalem, I would even say, especially Davka, as we arrived to Jerusalem, never to stop walking towards Jerusalem. Heavenly Jerusalem is ever so close. And we have been thrusted with being able to go towards that heavenly Jerusalem. Who are we to stop? She calls us. She calls the many. She calls the future. She calls us to complete each other, to speak with each other, to save the city of God, the city of holiness from ourselves, from our violence. And as a Jerusalemite, with all my heart, I believe that we can all help each other wherever we are to say to each other, L'shana ba'a b'Yerushalayim habnuya. This year, the Day of Jerusalem, is a terrible day. It's a day in which we Jerusalemites, who work very hard day after day to live together, cry and mourn for what has happened here and all around Israel with all our brothers and sisters right now and all around this region. Maybe next year, if we walk towards Jerusalem and we allow her to teach us how to heal the world, we will be able to say, L'shana ba'a b'Yerushalayim habnuya, knowing it's built just a bit more. As our ancestors said in the prayer we say over and over again, Or chadash el Tzion ta'ir, a new light shall shine upon Tzion, Zion. And may we all be worthy soon, soon, to enjoy its brightness. Blessed are you, creator of the lights. And blessed are you, people who hold up a light and come and gather to learn about Jerusalem, so we never drop her and we walk with her until we arrive. Toda.
First of all, I don't have words for how moving that presentation was and how beautiful it was, and also in a time of darkness, how much hope it gives to see those sources, ancient and modern, next to one another, from the Torah to Amichai. And I do realize that the idea that we're always looking forward, which we're about to do actually on Shavuot when we do Yizkor, because Yizkor is about memory, and yet Yizkor is in the future. You will remember, which is a beautiful kind of paradox that is I hope, what we represent. What I want to ask you is the hard question of how you deal inside yourself with both Jews and also those who oppose us, who don't believe in hope, who believe in victory alone. And how do you speak to them? Because obviously there must be people who say this to you. They don't really, it's not possible to ever speak to them. Your ideals don't touch them. You're being naive. So what's your response?
Thank you so much. First, I want to say that I think there are two different ways of standing against hope. One way is people who just lost hope. They really, really, I would say they're in a sort of very, they feel they have lost their path of hope and they're looking for it. And I want to say these are many of the people I know. I even want to say most of the Palestinians and most of the people I know living in the eastern part of the city really look for hope. I want to give COVID as an example. During the time of COVID here in Jerusalem, it was incredible to see how the city of Jerusalem took care of everyone, of all its citizens, and made sure that here in Jerusalem, all citizens would be vaccinated. It was a beautiful moment. It was amazing to see doctors, Arabs, and Jews coming together and just taking care of all of us together. I never felt that way in my own city, and I was born here and I live here for 46 years already. That was a very important moment, and that moment was in the hands of all the people who took upon themselves to be teachers of hope. Alongside these people, there are very few who stand against the idea of hope. They don't want hope. They stand against hope. They want to take away hope from others. It's not that they lost it, they take it away, they snatch it, they rob it from all of us, by the way. They rob it from their own children, by the way. They do it many times as bullies, standing against the greater good of all of us. And I think that it is really our duty not to let these people be heard, not to let their voices be the ones we hear all the time, because they are the few. Here in Jerusalem, I can say, walking the streets just today, walking in the city center, walking just next to the ancient walls of Jerusalem, most people do not want to be robbed of their hope. And it's our job to stand together against that. And I want to say that I think one of the very sad things that happen is that religion many times is perceived as one of the forces who stand against hope, while actually religion is hope itself, is the future itself. There is no greater faith in hope than what we hold. Jerusalem is a city filled with people who are religious, filled with people who are traditional. The Muslims now in their Ramadan invite us to their homes, even tonight. It's unbelievable. They have hope in me, inviting me to their house. And I do the same with them. So I want to say it's a very, very small minority that we have to stand against and we have to be able to fight against to make sure. But on the other hand, this is not our job. I think this is the tragedy. So much of our energy is put in that minority, while so many of us, the majority, is trapped in the way they rob us from our future and our hope.
Do you think that part of this is the volume at which people speak? That maybe the advocates of hope aren't as loud as the snatchers of hope?
Absolutely. You know, I learned about myself. I grew up in the Orthodox world here in Jerusalem. And I learned about myself that I was always taught to be silent, to be modest, never to speak, just to act what I believe in. And I think today I understand that I need to speak up. Even the Nevi'im, the prophets, say that to Yerushalayim, Harimi b'koach kolech, speak up, Jerusalem. You should speak up, the prophets say to Yerushalayim, because you walk around life and you walk around history modest, and you allow all these people to fight over you, but you need to speak up. So I think Jerusalem and us all need to speak up and voice the moderate people, those people who have trust in each other. And I think it's very important. I think many times the media itself prefers to hear people who speak it in a very extreme way. It's much more interesting. But I want us to be interesting. I think we are interesting. And I think it's very, very important to just say small, beautiful, beautiful stories of one person who helped me yesterday was an Arab, and another Jew who helped the Arab. And you know what? I think if we would live in such a world, Jerusalem would look so different to us. We need to speak Lashon HaTov, the language of good, kindness to each other and to the world. And I think in many ways, Jerusalem is also the teacher that heals our speech. Our speech right now is very extreme. And finding a way to speak in a different way, to speaking the moderate, the majority of the people, is one of the things that we should create in the journey of healing.
One of the reasons that I would love for you to address why I think this happens is what leaders have to default to the safety of their people. And they're afraid to take risks because the results could be so catastrophic. And so they tend to always to default to the stronger, the more belligerent, because they're afraid. And I wonder how you think about that or address it in terms of the leadership. One of the questions was, why does the leadership of all of these sides keep doing the same things, realizing that it always results in the same end?
Thank you for asking this. You know what? I want to tell you something very personal. And it relates to these days. You know that here in Israel, Yom Yerushalayim, the Jerusalem day, culminates days that start just after Pesach, after Passover. They start with the commemoration of the Holocaust, the day of the memory and the remembrance of the Holocaust, and then we move to the day in which we remember all the fallen soldiers of the state of Israel. And then we move slowly to Independence Day, and then we move to Yom Yerushalayim, and then we move to Shavuot and receive the Torah, the light. And I want to say to you, as a person, a private person, I lost my brother in the wars of Israel. His name was Nadav. He was a soldier. He was a paratrooper soldier in an elite unit in the army. And I remember 20 years ago, he's now almost fallen 20 years ago this summer. And I remember standing in Har Herzl where he's buried. And it was the area in which he was buried was relatively new and empty. Today, when I stand there on the day remembering all the fallen every year with my parents and our family, it's full. It's full. I am so much more afraid not to give a future to my children and my people here than I'm afraid to right now lose, the audience or the people. Guarding is a very serious thing. We cannot allow ourselves to bury more soldiers. These are our brothers and sisters, and they are the brave. We cannot allow ourselves to not to give a future to our children and to our grandchildren. This is our responsibility. My responsibility is to look at the greater good and not to keep moving around these same circles and think that one battle or another would make the difference. The wars we have gone through are serious. They're grand. They're heroic. And we have done that because we are Jews, not because we wanted war, because we believe in peace. Peace is the name of God. And we must hand to our children peace. Everything we have gone through, and all the wars my father went through, and all the wars we have seen, and all the terrible prices that we have paid as families, private families, and as a people, all of us must end in peace. And if they do not end in peace, we have not done what Jews have come to do in Eretz Israel, in the land of Israel.
I want to read you a comment. I'm sorry that the comment doesn't have a name, but whoever wrote it, I'm glad that you did. It says, one example of chesed that took place yesterday but didn't get much coverage in the media was the Tag Meir March, where hundreds of people walked through the streets of Jerusalem giving out flowers to people. Plus the many events planned to celebrate the beauty of the city and its inhabitants. Too much attention was paid to the Nationalist March at the expense of focusing on these friendship events.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Rabbi Wolpe, for reading this to all of us. We're there every year. every year we march and we hand the flowers. And you know, for the people who live in Jerusalem, many of the Muslims, they cry. They cry when they do that. When I was young, this is my tshuva. You know, every person has to do tshuva to try and figure out what the sins I did. And I have a few that I need to fix. One of them is that as a Jerusalemite, an Orthodox Jerusalemite, when I was young, I would walk on the day of Jerusalem in the streets of the Muslim quarter with a huge Degel Israel, a huge, flag of Israel. I didn't even see that there were Muslims there. I saw only Jews. And I think today I am still a very proud Zionist. The name of our community is Zion, Zion. But I want to be proud of being an exemplar, of walking around the streets on Jerusalem Day. And on Jerusalem Day, handing flowers to Jews and Christians and Muslim and saying, this is what Jerusalem was supposed to be about. Exactly that.
I think I should ask you a question that it occurs to me many people who are watching don't know, which is, how do you go from an Orthodox home to becoming a woman rabbi in Jerusalem?
Ay, that's such a huge question. It's a whole
Give us the
lifetime.
tamtzit, just the maybe tell about the Seder when you were a little girl.
Oh, Yazimuk, thank you, Rabbi Wolpe.
Sure.
Well, I'll tell you, I grew up in a world in which I could not even imagine in any form or way that I would be one day a rabbi. I was a young Orthodox girl, walking around the streets, loving Jewish life and Jewish tradition. And I remember for years sitting on the legs, on the knees of my grandfather, my Moroccan grandfather, who had built a Moroccan synagogue. And he would say, never forget to be a Jew, never forget to learn Torah, never forget to do all these things. And I felt I was in heaven. This was all I wanted to do. I never noticed that my mother was not sitting there. That my grandmother was not sitting there. For years, I didn't notice until Pesach, until Passover. One night, one Passover, when I was about, 5 or 7, I was young. And I remember myself sitting in the Passover Seder in Bat Yam, where my family, the Buskila family lives. And all the Buskila sat around the table, 40, 50 people, very happy, very Moroccan. And I remember that by the middle of saying the Haggadah, the story of coming out of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, my grandfather noticed that everyone was tired, which happens sometimes in very, very long Seder, in my family at least. And I remember he said to everyone, I see you're very tired. I'll just send the women to the kitchen. They'll go to the kitchen. And we'll be able to see the food, smell the food. We'll feel that everything is soon happening. The food is soon happening. And we'll all feel a bit better. And I remember my grandfather, Saftazari, Shetibadele Chaim Arukim, may she live a long life, a healthy life, starting to stand up to go to the kitchen. And my Ima, Shetibadele Chaim Arukim, standing up, going to the kitchen. And all my aunts. And I was the first granddaughter. I'm the eldest granddaughter in the family of Buskila. So I was expected to stand up and to go to the kitchen. And I stood. But suddenly in the middle, I still have no idea how it happened. I yelled, "Lo! No!" And I said to my grandfather, "This is the eve of Pesach. You, grandfather, Saba, you taught me that all Jews are supposed to come out of Mitzrayim and arrive to Eretz Israel. And you're leaving me in the kitchen? No! I want to arrive to Eretz Israel, to Yerushalayim, לשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה." There was silence, deadly silence in my family. My parents were underneath the table, both of them, of busha, of shame. And I remember my grandfather saying 2 words that changed my life. He said, "Hayalda tzodeket." The girl is right. And all the family came back. And we finished saying the story. And all of us that evening came out of Egypt. I remember until today. Since then, I learned much more than I could before. I actually realized that the boys learn Mishnah while I learned sewing, and that they learned Talmud, which I didn't even know of in that time when I was young in the Orthodox world. I remember my father coming and telling me that he found a school called Pelech with my teacher, Professor Alice Shalvi, in which girls and young Orthodox women, the only place in Israel, learn and take exams in oral law in Talmud. And I remember him telling me, this is not something done in our family. But if you choose to do so, we will support you. And I went and I learned. And then I went to the army and I met secular people. And I learned that it's not only about the oral law, it's also about all the treasures that our people have. It doesn't matter if we're religious or secular. We hold so many beautiful, beautiful treasures of our tradition, our culture. And then I remember until today, 1 month after I was married with Yossi, my husband, my partner, I remember that both of us were Orthodox. We never planned anything, and he'd never heard about a woman rabbi, and neither did I. I sat and ate couscous with one of our best friends, Rabbi Dani Segal. And Rabbi Dani asked me, what will you be doing now after you finish your bachelor's degree in the Hebrew University? And I said, I'm going to learn to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher. It's the most important thing. And what will you do? I asked Rav Dani. And he said, I'm going to learn to be a rabbi. Am Yisrael needs wonderful rabbis here in Eretz Yisrael who bring us together. And he said, but there's only one problem. We've been going through so much of life together. We're Orthodox. I'm going to learn to be a rabbi, but I cannot learn to be a rabbi if you will not to be a learn to be a rabbi. And I said, Danny, women are not rabbis. It cannot possibly happen. And he said, I heard that in America, there are women rabbis. I heard that there are conservative people. And I heard there are reform people. And I heard that there are women rabbis. And I never met conservative or reform women rabbis before. And I remember coming back home to my Yossi and telling him that there's such a thing called a woman rabbi in America. And he hugged me and he said, now I know what you need to do in your world. So had there not been women rabbis or men supporting women rabbis in America, I would never be a woman rabbi here in Eretz Yisrael. So it's so very much thanks to what you do there that gives me the ability to do what I do here.
I just want to let you know that there are numerous comments in the chat about how wonderful you are and this teaching is. And someone just asked if this video will be posted. You will find it on the Sinai YouTube site, on my Facebook, on the Sinai Facebook. So they said they want to use it for a class, which
wow.
is beautiful. Is beautiful. We've talked a lot about Israel and other and Arab and Muslim groups. I want to talk about Jewish tensions. Somebody asked, for example, about the Ethiopians and how are the Ethiopians doing, because they were there 2 years ago and there was a demonstration in Tel Aviv. Are they becoming more a part of mainstream Israeli society? And I also want to ask about the Haredim.
Toda for asking about both of them, because we should leave no one behind. We should leave
Haredim,
no one
by the way,
behind.
are the ultra-Orthodox. I don't want to use the word and not ultra-Orthodox. Please, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. I think it's, one of the things that, once again, when I say tshuva, when I was young, I never met a Chiloni, a secular Jew, ever in my life. And so I couldn't even appreciate it. And I think that one of the things we are now healing in Am Yisrael is the fact that we have been drifting so much apart of each other. When I grew up in the world in which I grew up, I learned in the schools only of Orthodox Jews, and I never met other people. And I think what you witness now, and I think much of it is also with the support of American Jews who have a love for Klal Israel, I feel. Here in Eretz Israel, we are going through a journey of coming back together, of knowing each other. For me, only knowing secular Jews took a lot of time.
Right.
And I think there were so many people injured. You mentioned the Ethiopians. I also want to say the Sfaradim. I think many of the people who come from Arab countries have felt it throughout many, many years. I want to mention the Russians, that so many of them have felt that they're not Jewish enough or not Jews or not recognized as Jews. And also, as you mentioned, the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, so many of them feel left out. And while so many of them have a lot of will to be part of what we do here, we are in charge of bringing back our family. This is our greatest and first mission. This is the first mission. And you mentioned at the beginning, that I live here in Yerushalayim and that I work in Zion. I founded the community of Zion with a beautiful group of friends and founders. But I also work, as you said, and founded with a beautiful other group of friends and partners, the Bet Midrash for Israeli rabbis.
Right.
And that is exactly what we do. In the Bet Midrash of Israeli rabbis, we bring Russians and Ethiopian leaders, we bring Haredi leaders, we bring secular from kibbutzim leaders, and all of them are trained as rabbis and call each other rabbis. The Haredi calls the Chiloni rabbi. The Tzioni Dati calls the Ethiopian rabbi. We all have Shem Mishpacha. We call it Shem Mishpacha. We are all recognizing each other with dignity, that all of us are needed for Am Yisrael. How will it help me if someone sends me to a secular kibbutz that doesn't want a rabbi like me? That's not what they need. They need one of their kibbutznikim, women or men, leaders, natural leaders, to become their rav or rabbah. So I think what we do is exactly that. We try to bring those people together to recognize each other, to recognize their communities. We have such a long way to go. Ethiopians that were here protesting 2 years ago and have walked towards Jerusalem and have lost 4,000 people on the way to Jerusalem and have showed us what dedication to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem is. Who are we to question their Judaism? Who are we not to give them every kind of leadership? I think there were many things that happened in Israel that happened and healed the situation. For instance, now in Israel, the state of Israel recognizes their leadership. The Kessim are recognized now in Israel, which is a very huge thing. It's very important. But we still have a very long way to go. I want to say, as a Jerusalemite, that Davka here in Jerusalem, there's a lot of work done with all these different communities, the secular, the Ethiopian, the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox, many others. They're organizations that bring together young leaders who work together. This will not be fixed in a moment. It will be fixed very, very slowly. It's the dignity of those people that was hurt. And it was the opportunity to live a life that is fully recognized and appreciated and gives them every possibility. We have a long way to go until we share the wealth of our people in a responsible way. And we allow everyone to come together feeling that we cannot live without them, that they are needed in the gathering of the exiles. So if you ask me, we are now in the next 70 years. And after 70 years of building the body of the state of Israel, we build now the soul. And building the soul is also building and healing the wounds, and there are deep wounds, and it will take us a long time. And it starts with leadership. When we have leaders from all these places who are seen and perceived as very important leaders of Am Yisrael, then it makes a difference. And I think that here also, once again, just like I said in my own story as a woman, I think also here, American Jewry, as our chavruta, as our partner in this healing and in this study, has a very big role. Because every time you recognize one of these rabbis or you recognize one of these leaders, Ethiopian, may it be Ethiopian or Haredi, as a partner, as an important person, despite the fact that they're not recognized by the state of Israel, Davka, and you give them kavod and respect and a place and power to create difference in the world, they have more ability to really heal together with all of us. So this witnessing that you witness what we are going through, after 70 years that there were many things that couldn't be healed because we were very busy with so many other things. I think you're witnessing us and helping us and allowing us to see all those problems and dilemmas that we have not addressed properly, to see it with clarity, to see it with truth, to see it with depth. As I see many times, American Jewry comes with such truth and clarity and depth and has time to question and time to figure out the different ways to fix and heal. Think about it, that in the time we were in wars and building a country, you were asking yourself, what is it to be a Jew? Which is exactly the question we are asking ourselves now. What is it to be a Jew? You have so much to give us in this journey, and we need you.
Well, we need each other. No question about that. It's very unprofessional for me to just get up and applaud every time you finish speaking, so I'm not going to, but you can imagine that I am. And instead, I want to ask you this, which is part of the great difference between, there are many, many differences, but between Israeli Jewry and American Jewry is that in Judaism in Israel is tied to politics as well as to religion. And when you say we're not recognized, that's because there's an establishment that can recognize you. Our model has other advantages and disadvantages, but I wonder if I gave you the magic wand, would you change the religious political structure of the way Israel works?
Yes, yes, I would. I say it every time I say the hymn of Medinat Israel, Liyot Am Chofshi. I want us to be free Jews. I want us to be free-willed Jews, Jews who are able to choose for themselves who the rabbi that will marry them will be, and bring that rabbi to marry them, to escort them in life. Jews who find different ways to convert and welcome converts and tell them that they are welcome in our people. Jews who find different ways of celebrating Shabbat and honoring and respecting the idea of Shabbat and feel the richness of our people. You know, the richness in this richness is felt every moment. There's a moment, a glimpse of freedom. But that freedom is going to be one of the greatest challenges of our people. Sometimes I feel it's a tragedy, but most of the time I feel that it's maybe that's part of our destiny. Maybe Jews had to come to the state of Israel and build it. And first, as Herzl said, they should have guarded the body of the Jews and then guard their own Judaism. Our seriousness will come to fruition when we stand at the side of our Judaism. And now that the state is here, we are called to the exam of Judaism. Will we be standing next to the Judaism that we all know from so many generations, a free Judaism, a very rich one? And will we fight for it? Will we not give up on it? Will we think it's important enough? 20 years ago, I would say that there are very few Jews who think it's important. Today, it's completely different. There are millions of Jews who choose to get married the way they want. And there are millions of Jews who want to be free in their country. And I think many times of it as a prayer. And also, I want to say one more thing. You know, building a country called Medinat Israel, the State of Israel, is really a dream coming true. It's the most precious thing. And I hope for myself that my children and children's children will live in Israel, and that the fact that there are Jews all around the world being in contact and connection with Jerusalem, to me, I'm in awe. I'm in awe with every Jew who feels that his responsibility in life is being connected to the state of Israel. And I'm in awe of all the rabbis and of you, Rabbi Wolpe, who leads a community that has such a love, a true love and bond to the state of Israel. I want to say that maybe, I'm not sure, one of the stages that we are now arriving to is really being a country that exceeds a country. What do I mean? We are here to create a state, but it's not just a state. It's a state of the freedom of the Jews. And so now the next stage after creating this state is to go within the state of Israel to Yerushalayim, to the city of God. I always say, why does Yom Yerushalayim, Day of Jerusalem, come after Independence Day? Why? Why not the opposite? Because Independence Day is not the end of the journey to Eretz Israel, to the state of Israel. The journey here to our country, to this land, to the state of Israel, is the journey to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. And this is where we need to arrive to. Liyot am chofshi be'artzenu, to be a free people, creating a beautiful, beautiful, kind place for ourselves, for every person who lives here, and for the entire world, and for every Jew to be proud of.
That is a beautiful statement on which not to end, because I know that you have a very special teaching that you want to share with us in a song. But before we do, there's one last question that I very much want to ask you, which is, you said that there was 20 years ago, there were not that many Jews in Israel that cared whether their life cycle events, other things were Jewish. You know, this is the great struggle in the diaspora, is to get Jews to care about Judaism as opposed to disappearing. So for those of us who care deeply about Judaism, the diaspora, do you have any words of wisdom? How did it how did that situation turn around in Israel, and what might we do or do better or do differently?
I could only say what I learned here.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing the problems with the young. The young are the future, and they need to feel that we share with them candidly our dilemmas and our fears, our concerns, and the I don't know how to say this in English, but the problematic, you help me out, but
Problematic nature.
problematic nature, toda, hallelujah, of this, of the dreams of the Jewish people. How can we both be particular and universalist? How will we hand them those things? I think once we started handing it to the young people and they felt the awe of the question, the concern, and also the responsibility in holding some of the problem solving, that made a very big difference. And I can say this because I was that young person.
Right.
And it was someone who handed it to me and who said, listen, I did everything I could. Now it's your turn. And when he turned to me and I said, wait a minute, I looked to the right, I looked to the left, and I said, now it's me. I can see it in many, many ways. Our children need to know how concerned we are. They need to hold the problems with us. They need to understand the complexity of all these dilemmas. And once we do that and we allow them to understand how hurtful this is for us, how caring we are, and how we trust them that they will hold this and it will not fall, then something happens in the world. And that's midor ledor, midor ledor. Part of our concern is also the answer. They hold the concern with us and they start holding the responsibility with us. Midor ledor.
And now I know that you have a teaching and a song you'd like to conclude on. Let me just tell you, I did not read the scores of comments about how wonderful people found your presence and your participation and your words and your eloquence. But it's been a delight and an inspiration, and I look forward to learning with you more.
Thank you so much. From all my heart, thank you. And I want to say, Bemet, from all my heart, it's not me, it's my grandparents, it's my great-grandparents. Everything they gave me and everything I know comes from them. So I want to finish and end, as you said, Rabbi Wolpe, just with showing you hope and showing you the many and showing you the dialogue that we were looking for at the very beginning. This is petition that we published just before Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day. It says, Yehi shalom b'cheilech shalva be'armenotayich. And it's a letter of religious leaders, Jews from the right and from the left, from settlements, and from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, alongside with Muslims and with Christians, who wrote together a petition for the love of Jerusalem and for the safety of all people. And you can see down here, I think 120 people who signed up from right and from the left, from settlements and from Tel Aviv, Muslims and Christians and Jews. This is the many, and this is the future, and this is the dialogue. And this is what Yehuda Amichai, the poet, told us. Ani ma'amin belev shalem. I believe with a perfect heart. Believing in actions. Believing in actions. In putting down your name. In creating kindness. In crying for everyone. All children who are now suffering wherever they are. Crying for all of them. All of us are worthy of a world of peace. And Jerusalem, I think and I hope, is exactly that mother, that place, dreaming it for us and calling us to act for that to happen. So I want to end with showing you this, showing you hope, and also with a beautiful song from a prayer that we lead every year in our community of Zion, here in Yerushalayim in Jerusalem. We lead a prayer every year for the Day of Jerusalem, and it's a prayer in the Tower of David with Muslims and Christians, Leman achai v're'ai, for all of us. May there be peace. May we have faith in us, and may we walk with Jerusalem. בשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה. So to end, I invite everyone to pray for Yerushalayim on the day of Yerushalayim.
Because of my sisters and friends, please let me ask, please let me sing peace to you. Because of my brothers and friends, because of my sisters and friends, please let me ask, please let me sing peace to you. This is the house of the Lord. I wish the best for you. This is the house of the Lord. I wish the best for you. من أجل كل وحيد، من أجل كل فقير، أهتف أهتف لكم سلام، من أجل كل وحيد، من أجل كل فقير، أهتف أهتف لكم سلام، من أجلك يرشليم أنتم سلام، من أجلك
So I want to close by, first of all, thanking Roz and Abner once again, and thanking you, of course, Rabbi Tamar Appelbaum, and by quoting something that was just written in the chat. They said, I wonder if you took a poll, how many people watching would be crying? And my prayer is that these are the kinds of tears that we'll shed in the future for Jerusalem, and not the tears that we've been shedding today. God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, Roz and Abner, for making
Thank
it
you.
possible. Goodbye.